He was only 28 years old when the son of Golden Age icon Errol Flynn disappeared into the Cambodian jungle. This week's I Remember When True Crime Edition is about Sean Flynn. Quick warning before we get into this one, we're going to talk about people being harmed, lives being taken. If you can't handle that right now, I totally understand, and I'll catch you on the next one. Sean Leslie Flynn was born on May 31st, 1941 in Los Angeles, California to French singer and actress Lily Damita and famed Australian actor Errol Flynn. Lily was Errol's first wife and they divorced in 1942 when Sean was still very young. While Errol would spend years fighting her for custody, she would spend the majority of Sean's young life raising him on her own. Errol passed away in Vancouver, BC in 1959. I do have a video on him on my Not So Secret Vancouver playlist if you're interested. And he left Sean some money to use towards school. Sean attended Duke University briefly before leaving to pursue acting after he had been offered a contract to the sequel of Errol's film Captain Blood, aptly titled The Son of Captain Blood. It wasn't his first time on the big screen. He had previously appeared in his father's show, the Errol Flynn Theater, and at the behest of his friend, George Hamilton, yes, that George Hamilton, he shows up in Where the Boys Are very briefly in a blue Xavier University sweatshirt. He would appear in several more films throughout the 60s, like Mission to Venice and Duel at the Rio Grande, would release 4 singles, and was engaged a few times, once to actress Julie Payne, the daughter of Anne Shirley and John Payne, and then to Alessandro Paneo. As the 60s wore on, he became bored with acting and went to Africa in search of adventure. He worked as a safari guide and as a game warden in Kenya, but those jobs must not have paid as well as he needed because he returned to acting in Europe to earn some cash. In January 1966, he flew to South Vietnam as a freelance photojournalist for the French magazine Paris Match. He also worked for Time Life and United Press International covering the Vietnam War. He made a name for himself as a combat photographer. He even wounded his knee while out in the field. The following month, in April of 1966, he was on patrol with the Green Berets when his group was ambushed by the Viet Cong and had to fight his way out with an M16. Afterwards, he left Vietnam to appear in his final film, Singapore, Singapore, before returning to Vietnam where he parachuted into combat zones with U.S. troops. In 1967, he went to Jordan to cover the Six-Day War before returning to Vietnam the following year. While there, he worked with CBS and was injured by grenade fragments. In 1970, he traveled to Cambodia on assignment for Time as the North Vietnamese troops advanced into the country. On April 6th, Sean was with fellow photojournalist Dana Stone. The pair were leaving Phnom Penh when they heard that there was a Viet Cong checkpoint on Highway 1. They headed out on motorcycles to take a look at the checkpoint before heading to a press conference in Saigon. Most of the other photojournalists opted to travel in limos. A fellow journalist, Stephen Ball, snapped a photograph of the two men as they headed out to try and get images of the Viet Cong. It's the last known photo of them. It's said that when they got to the checkpoint, they watched from a distance at first, speaking to other journalists who were there. They approached the checkpoint alone, where they were pulled from their motorcycles and taken to a nearby tree line. No one ever saw them again. Sean was only 28 years old at the time he went missing. Dana was 30 and had a wife. Her name was Louise. As the weeks wore on, more journalists were captured. Some were killed. Stephen Ball said, "I think they were among the first to go missing. It had not reached the point where we knew quite how dangerous it was." Between the period of 1970 to 1975, it's approximated that 37 journalists went missing or were killed in Cambodia. There were numerous theories about what happened to Sean and to Dana. The most believable theory is that they were captured by the Viet Cong and turned over to the Khmer Rouge, where they were held for a year before being executed. Some believe Sean had contracted malaria and the medicine he was given by his captors was insufficient, forcing them to end his life. This was an issue that plagued the Cambodian people for years under the Khmer Rouge rule, leading to thousands of Cambodians dying from a very treatable disease. They also just outright murdered millions of Cambodians, with the estimated total of deaths during their reign between 1.5 to 2 million people, which there is a word for, and it starts with a G and ends with a side. Lily spent years and copious amounts of money looking for her son. In 1984, she had him declared dead in absentia. But that doesn't mean that the world's fascination with Sean's disappearance waned. In 2009, Perry Dean Young published Two of the Missing, Remembering Sean Flynn and Dana Stone, chronicling their capture and the continued search for them. Mythic Films had optioned the rights to the screenplay in the summer of 2008, prior to the book's publishing date. It was reported that Heath Ledger was considering taking on the role of Sean prior to his own death, but the timelines on that don't really align. I think people just like it because it's kind of spooky. The search for the remains has also continued over the last 5 decades. In 2010, 2 men thought they might have found the remains in a grave in Phnom Penh and turned them over to the embassy. They were chastised for damaging the remains in the process of recovery as they were not professional archaeologists, obviously. A team went back to the site to recover additional fragments. The men defended themselves, saying they used military manuals for bone recovery to guide them and that Sean's half-sister Rory had supported their initiative and that they had permissions from authorities in the district where they found the remains. Rory is the daughter of Errol and second wife Nora Eddington, who was an actress and socialite. Actor Sean Flynn, not to be confused with his uncle, is the son of Rory and Gideon Amir. The remains that were found were tested and were not a DNA match to any of the relatives of Sean and Dina. While there have been rumored sightings of Sean in countries like Mexico, as there usually are in these cases, the reality is that many people perished in Cambodia during the 70s, and Sean and Dana were unfortunately one of the many. Lily passed away in March of 1994, and I hope that she was able to find the answers that she was looking for once she crossed the Great Mortal Divide.